Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Now, after Theresa May had been to see the Queen at Buckingham Palace on Friday, she made a brief statement in Downing Street. Let's just remind ourselves of what she said.
We will continue to work with our friends and allies in the Democratic Unionist Party in particular. Our two parties have enjoyed a strong relationship over many years, and this gives me the confidence to believe that we will be able to work together in the interests of the whole United Kingdom. This will allow us to come together as a country and channel our energies towards a successful Brexit deal that works for everyone in this country, securing a new partnership with the EU which guarantees our long-term prosperity. That's what people voted for last June. That's what we will deliver. Now let's get to work.
And I'm joined now by the Conservative MP, Dominic Raab. He's a former government minister. He's been tipped for a return in Theresa May's new all-inclusive post-election reshuffle. We shall see. Welcome to the programme.
Good to see you.
Her two most senior advisers have fallen on their swords. Most of the cabinet has gone to ground since the result. Could Theresa May be any more isolated?
I don't think that's true. Look, you've got three cabinet members doing TV this morning. We're in the middle of a reshuffle, as you've just said, so you wouldn't expect them all to be out on the airwaves. And also, of course, we're in the business of hammering out the detail on the supply and confidence arrangement with the DUP.
And where are we with that?
We're just on the question of the Chief of Staff. Actually, the new appointment has been made, Gavin Barwell, colleague I know very well, smart policy guy, but also very sensitive political radar, great appointment, and that shows you actually we're moving forward.
It was forced honour.
Well, I think that they did the honourable thing. I think the
two aides who fell on their sword.
And you know, Nick Timothy spelt it out in a column for the Conservative Home, so people can read that and make of it what they will. But the key point is looking forward, which we've got to try and do. We've had the outcome of the election. The people have spoken. We've got to try and make the best of it. And I think Gavin Barwell is a really important appointment. And you know, Conservative MPs across the board know him, respect him, trust him.
All right. Of course, no one in the country's heard of him, but maybe that doesn't matter. In Downing Street...
Well, I wonder how many knew of Nick Timothy or Fiona Hill before.
Well, they do now.
They do.
Do you agree with Anna Soubry there that she is no more than a caretaker Prime Minister now?
No, absolutely not. I think, look, emotion's always a bit raw when you haven't done as well as we'd have hoped in this election. But we still won the most votes and the most seats, and my reading from talking to MPs across the board is the overwhelming majority want to see Theresa May continue in office. We're going to have to, as a matter of necessity really, the people have spoken, we've got to respect what the people have decided in this election. We're going to have to do this supply and confidence arrangement with the DUP. There are strong areas of overlap, but we don't agree on everything. But the key thing we've got to give is the country some certainty and some direction moving forward. And that is the only viable option. I think people are rallying behind that.
Not all.
George
Osborne said this morning on the BBC that Mrs May was, quote, a dead woman walking.
Well, look, George has made the transition from a Conservative politician to a mischievous journalist with a great ease. But I think actually most MPs, when they listen to that, will think it's disloyal, unprofessional, and frankly pretty self-indulgent. So in reality, I suspect that will shore up support amongst a lot of MPs for Theresa May.
What went wrong?
Well, look, I'm not going to sugarcoat the result here. We did far worse than we'd expected, and we need to learn the lessons. You've heard...
Why?
Well, why do we need to learn the lessons?
No, why? I'm trying to find out. I know it went wrong. Yeah. I'm asking, why did it go wrong?
Well, there's no one thing, and I think you need to take some time to learn the lessons. I do think we need to show some humility about the result, and Nick Timothy has written a column, and he's touched on some of the issues from his perspective. But to be honest with you, I'm focused now, amidst all of the drama and the disappointment of not getting the result we wanted, on the facts. Facts are we've got 56 more seats in the Labour Party, and we're the only ones that can put together a legitimate government that could also be effective, that could pass a budget, that can pass legislation, however tricky that may be. And I want to see...
Of course, all that remains to be seen. You may not be able to do that.
Well, we are the only ones with the DUP that could form a viable, effective government that would respect legitimately the outcome of this election. So we've got to focus 100% on that.
Well, let's do that, because Mrs May promised strength and stability. But we now have a hung parliament in which she's dependent on the DUP, even for the slimmest of majorities. Even with the DUP, it's going to be a very slim majority. There's nothing strong and stable about that, is there?
Well, look, I've said to you, I'm not going to tell you this result was the one we wanted. We're disappointed
But it's not strong and stable.
But, well, look, I think it can be effective. I think it's also the only outcome that can respect and be legitimate in terms of the outcome of the election. And at the end of the day, we've had the campaigning. You and I can differ on opinions, but the facts are there. The parliamentary arithmetic is there. The only way we can have an effective government of any kind that could pass a budget is with the Conservatives, with that support.
All right, so, but to be able to do that, you would now have to make compromises that you would not have had to make if you'd won a substantial majority. So what parts of the manifesto will have to go to get a budget, to get a confidence motion through?
Well, we're 48 hours after the election. I can't answer that definitively, but what I can say is this. What you've got to do, every MP, whichever part of the country they were elected on the Conservative basis, is got to go and deliver as best we can our manifesto commitments. And at the same time, that's what the country would expect. And at the same time, we've had forced on us the need to be flexible
because
about
the people didn't vote for your manifesto in the end, so something has to go. The triple lock for pensioners, which you were going to change, the DUP is in favour of the triple lock. So does that bit of the Tory manifesto go?
Well, you can ask me any different aspect of the manifesto. We will know the answers, I suspect, next week on the detail.
Part of this process. I mean, you were on. You were on our programmes more than any cabinet minister. You are now. You're going to be drafted back in.
Well, look, don't bet too much money on the tittle tattle in the media. But look, I'm trying to answer your question, which is that we've got the outline of the supply and confidence arrangement that we want to enter in with the DUP. We're hammering out the details, and then next week we'd hope to be in a position to then publish that, and you can see all the details.
What about social care? Is it back to square one on that?
You can ask me all the different points in the manifesto, but you know I can't answer that question until...
You must have a view.
Until... Well, look, I want to deliver as much of this manifesto as possible, because
you haven't got a mandate to do that.
Well, and that's because we've got...
so I'm trying to work... The Queen's speech is only a week away. It's a week tomorrow, I think I'm right in saying. I'm trying to work out what sort of parts, now that you didn't win the election. Labour lost, but you didn't win. And I'm trying to work out how you've just said we'll have to compromise and make changes. So I think it's legitimate to ask where you think they will have to be.
And I'm explaining that I don't have the answers on all the detail, because until we've formed the supply and confidence arrangement with the DUP, we will not have all those details. But my principle, my starting point, is we deliver as much of the manifesto as we conceivably can. And I think that's what the country would expect, because that's what they've elected us to do. But of course, they've forced this situation, or they've given us their verdict, and we need to respect the outcome of the election, and so we won't be able to do it in the same way as if we had a stonking majority, obviously.
What do you make now of the result has given a kind of new spring in the step of politicians who wanted to remain in the European Union. What do you make of, and you heard Anna Soubry, but many others have said it too, that you need to reconsider your Brexit stance. You need, in their language, to soften your Brexit stance. What do you say to them?
Right, look, we were just, whether you're a Scottish MP, a Welsh MP or an English MP, elected to Parliament behind me on the basis of a manifesto which set out in great detail, 75-page white paper, detail in the manifesto about our approach to Brexit. All this talk about hard Brexit, our ambition is to get the best possible deal we can with our EU partners.
But do you change your stance? You didn't get a majority for your Brexit position. Do you now follow the advice of Ruth Davidson, which is to go for an open Brexit, framing new Brexit strategy?
Like hard, like soft Brexit. I'm not quite sure what Ruth means by that, but she did a great job in Scotland. But the fact is, every Conservative Scottish, English and Welsh MP was elected on our manifesto, so obviously we deliver the plans in that manifesto as best we can, including and especially on Brexit. And by the way, just a point of fact, obviously the Conservative number of votes, number of seats went up. Labour effectively...
Conservative number of seats didn't go up.
Sorry, the vote share and...
Vote share went up, but you lost seats.
But we are 56 seats ahead of the Labour Party. The Labour Party effectively endorsed the Leave the EU strategy we set out. They certainly didn't offer an alternative.
So no change in Brexit strategy.
The point I wanted to make is that anti-Brexit parties, SNP and Lib Dem, both suffered a fall in vote share. So I think actually the country's quite clear they want to see us make a success of Brexit, and that's what we're going to do.
So no change?
I don't think so. I think the plan set out in the white paper that Parliament voted on to begin negotiations is the right one, and I think that voters expect you to deliver on the manifesto you ran on, whether you're a Scottish MP, an English MP or a Welsh MP.
I think your helicopter's arrived to whisk you off to a meeting with the Prime Minister. Come back when you know what job you're going to get. Dominic Raab there.
In case you're just waking up, let's round up the latest news. Theresa May will meet DUP leader Arlene Foster on Tuesday, despite Downing Street releasing an incorrect statement saying a deal with the party had already been done. What tripe? Let's get on with the job. Boris Johnson reacts to reports that he's preparing to launch a leadership challenge against Mrs May. And I can still be Prime Minister, Jeremy Corbyn says this is still on as he promises to fight Theresa May's attempt to run a minority government. Now, the man with the inside track on the pretty remarkable story that everyone's talking about this morning is our Ireland correspondent David Blevins. He's been speaking to the DUP leader Arlene Foster, so let's hear what she had to say.
Well, we had very good discussions yesterday with the Conservative Party in relation to how we could support them in forming a national government, one that would bring stability to the nation. And those discussions continue. We have made good progress, but the discussions continue.
Now, given that there appears to have been this mistake by the Downing Street press office, surely that places you in a stronger position even than before. What are the DUP asking for in terms of support?
Well, I'm not going to negotiate over the airwaves, but what I will say is that we will, of course, act in the national interest and do what is right for the United Kingdom as a whole, and of course Northern Ireland in particular. There's been a lot of hyperbole about the DUP since Thursday, a lot of things said, a lot of people who really don't know what we stand for. But just to be clear, we will act in the national interest. We want to do what's right for the whole of the UK and to bring stability to the government of the United Kingdom.
Well, we can speak now to David, who's in Brookborough. And David, what is the latest on this incredible and fast-moving story?
Sophie, what an incredible twist we had at midnight last night, and the latest development this morning is that we now can confirm that the DUP leader Arlene Foster will meet with Prime Minister Theresa May in Downing Street on Tuesday morning, despite Number 10 mistakenly issuing a statement last night indicating that agreement had already been secured with the Democratic Unionist Party here in Northern Ireland. For anyone who is indeed just waking up, let me try and talk you through the sequence of events. At one stage yesterday evening, we had a statement from the Downing Street press office telling us that the 10 Democratic Unionist Party members of Parliament had agreed to provide some sort of support for a minority government, not in the form of a coalition, but in supply and confidence. In other words, supporting the government on key votes like the budget and the Queen's speech. But within a couple of hours, the DUP were issuing their own statement telling us that the talks were actually continuing, that they were progressing well, and that they hoped they would conclude in agreement, but had not reached that point. And then we learned from our own very credible sources that Downing Street had in fact issued the wrong press statement in error, and that really is extraordinary when you consider that on Friday morning the Prime Minister stood outside Number 10 and indicated that she'd secured an agreement with the DUP when she talked about preparing to form a government with friends and allies, and just minutes after that DUP sources were telling me all they had agreed to was a conversation with the Tories. So really it is a tangled web this morning, and one I suppose that Arlene Foster and Theresa May are going to have to find their way out of when they meet in Downing Street on Tuesday.
David, thank you.
I'm delighted to be joined from County Laois by Ireland's Foreign Minister Charlie Flanagan. Mr Flanagan, thank you so much for joining me this morning. As you know, Theresa May's chief whip is currently in Belfast trying to negotiate some kind of alliance with the DUP. Do you have concerns that such a deal could threaten the, long sought-after peace and stability of Northern Ireland?
Well, this is the stuff of politics, and it's not only the Chinese that are living in interesting times. We obviously have got to acknowledge the very close result in the election. Yes, I understand that moves are afoot to establish a deal between the Conservative Party and the DUP. I don't think, mind you, it's going to be done on Sunday, because I don't believe the DUP will do deals on Sunday. But I do believe it's important that we've certainty. And our perspectives here and our priorities here in Ireland, having watched closely the situation for the past year now after the referendum, our priorities are to ensure that there is as close as possible a deal between the UK and the EU, having regard to the very severe consequences and severe adverse consequences of the UK leaving the European Union. these adverse consequences on us here in Ireland. And of course, you quite rightly advert to the situation in Northern Ireland, where there hasn't been a functioning executive or governance now since before Christmas last year. So it's important, yes, that the negotiations take place, and of course we will be anxious to ensure that whatever the result of these negotiations doesn't in any way adversely impact on our unique circumstances here in Ireland, with particular reference to our peace process.
Well, exactly, because the Good Friday Agreement does talk about the rigorous impartiality that both the Irish government and the British government are supposed to have as guarantors of that agreement, and some would say any deal with the DUP would rather undermine that rigorous impartiality on the Westminster side.
Well, not necessarily the case, and of course it remains to be seen what the nature of that deal is. But this is an issue that I did address evening before last with Secretary of State James Brokenshire. I look forward to meeting with him again tomorrow if his appointment is reaffirmed. But yes, I think it's an important issue that you raised, the objectivity of both governments, and both governments working strictly in accordance with our legal responsibilities under the Belfast Agreement. Irish government as co-guarantor, indeed British government as co-guarantor.
Now, you are firmly committed to maintaining an open border. As I understand it, the DUP are firmly committed to maintaining an open border between the Republic and Northern Ireland. Would you urge Theresa May, in the light of this election result, to reconsider her opposition to remaining a member of the European single market? Because, of course, if we were to remain members of the customs union and the single market, it would make that aspect of the negotiation that much easier.
Yeah, I'm a neighbouring foreign minister. My interest is in our own strategic priorities and the maintenance of an open border, the insurance that nothing happens in the context of a withdrawal of the UK from the European Union that will adversely impact upon the very fragile peace process and the very fragile political situation in Northern Ireland that everybody is aware of. So I want as close as possible a relationship afterwards between the UK and the European Union. I accept that the UK is leaving the European Union. I speak regularly to my colleague Boris Johnson. He attempts to reassure me by saying we're leaving the European Union, but we're not leaving Europe. So that leads me to believe that as close as possible a relationship is something that is in the best interest of the people of the UK, is in the best interest of the European Union, and is most certainly in the best interest of the people of Ireland, having regard to the closely entwined circumstances between our respective jurisdictions, our common travel area, the peace process that I mentioned, the fact that looking west from Brussels, Ireland is not only an island behind an island, but is now likely to be an island behind an island that's no longer a member of the European Union. I'm looking forward to continuing to work very closely.
We're slightly tight for time. Can I just ask one final? Can I just ask you one final question, because we're slightly tight for time? Obviously, the political situation in the UK is now very messy. It may well be the case that it will take some time to establish a new position on Brexit, which may be necessary. How do you think the other EU governments would respond if the UK requested a little bit longer for these talks, a little bit of a delay?
Well, I'm conscious of the fact that this clock is ticking. We're a year now since the referendum. We lost some time over the last 7 weeks during the general election campaign. Europe is ready to start these negotiations. Ireland is ready to sit with our 26 EU colleagues and commence the negotiations, because uncertainty is the enemy of stability and uncertainty is the enemy of business.
So you'd be against the delay? You'd be against the delay?
And really, I have no evidence that there is going to be a rethink.
OK. Look, very nice.
We're ready to roll. My understanding from all of my EU colleagues is they're ready to roll. But there's one thing I do want to say, Robert, in that it has been said that Europe wishes to punish the UK. I see no evidence of that. I see no intention of that. What we need to do is to commence this process in a constructive and orderly manner, in a spirit of goodwill and in a spirit of ensuring that a good deal is done for all our people.
Mr. Flanagan, many, many thanks.
I've been getting away with it all my